Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for meeting my dear friend and colleague, Josh. He is going to be speaking with us at the symposium in the near future on breaking happy.
Breaking
So,
Habit.
so Josh, we know veterinary team members are like in this pursuit of happiness, but tell us, without giving away the entire program, why would they want to break happy?
Sure. Yeah. So, the pursuit of happiness, it's it's kind of baked into the foundation of our country. It's like, feels like an inalienable right of being a human being. And certainly all of us in vet med, man, it would be great if we could just be happy all the time. Uh, but we find in the research and sort of in real life experiences that, that's not really possible. The human brain, the human body is not built to be in a state of constant happiness. It's just not something we can achieve. And in fact, trying to, kind of come up against that reality and go against it, not only is it unachievable, but it can actually be really detrimental for us. So we're going to talk a bit about this idea of the pursuit of happiness as the primary goal, maybe not the healthiest approach, but we'll replace that with a much healthier way to achieve a real nice, sustainable, and fulfilling sense of well-being.
That's got to be a relief to a lot of people saying, thank God I don't have to be happy all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, there's this ground that we want to shoot for, but that's got to be a relief too for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful perspective. I think that it can feel burdensome to feel like you have to be happy all the time. And somehow, if you're not happy universally all of the time, then there's something wrong with you. And actually that belief system is really quite broken. And so that's why we call it breaking happy. We're going to break it down. Yeah.
Breaking heavy. Yeah. I just recall, I've had those instances in my life when, and as I become an older woman, I just cry more often. And I think it's just whether it be for joy, for sadness, for grief, for acknowledging what is, it's just
Sure.
a part of that. And nobody has to fix me. It's
Right.
not to be fixed. It's just to be acknowledged and accepted.
Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what advice could you give our viewers watching this briefly in living well?
Yeah, I think for me, living well, I think one of the strongest sort of superpowers that we can develop, and it's a wonderful superpower because it's accessible to everybody. And it's this idea of developing the skill to challenge our thoughts. So,
Ooh.
yeah, when we find ourselves thinking a certain way or feeling a certain way that feels maybe like it's contributing to something unproductive. So, we start thinking of things like, oh man, clients, they're all so demanding. If that was true, then that would be a pretty unproductive state of affairs to be in. That to always be battling the demands, the potentially unreasonable demands of clients. But if we can learn to develop the skills to challenge those thoughts, it's not necessarily a skill that will eliminate that thought. That can be kind of a gut reaction to things. A client calls in and they're making demands, and it's very easy to sort of universalize that as to clients are all demanding. But if we can learn the skill of challenging those thoughts, it can contribute to a lot more resiliency, a lot more productive ability to cope, perhaps some empathy, and then eventually practicing these skills over and over again can really make a huge difference in our ability to live and work well.
I remember being in a meeting, you and I talking, and we got on this idea of cognitive biases, and that just opened up this whole new world for me.
Yeah.
I love that. And we're not going to dive into it here, but when we test the assumptions that we have and where those beliefs came from, oh my goodness, it can be just like peeling off that scab and digging deeper. I know that sounds really disgusting, but taking away that onion and peeling down, where did this come from and why do I have that bias?
Yeah, I actually want to play with that scab analogy for a second. For me, it almost feels like you know, you get, so I'm a pretty hairy guy, and I'll get ingrown hairs, occasionally, and sometimes they'll get like a little bit of a whitehead, right? And so, there might be a little bit of
Well, thank you for the visual, Josh.
Sure. Well, you opened up the door to the scab,
I did.
so we're going to get real here. But
I love it.
we all have had this, where you get some sort of a local irritation. Maybe it contributes to some sort of a tiny little abscess, or a whitehead or something like that, and it's irritating, and it's there. And the world is very much like that. There are things that irritate us, that set us off, that put us on some sort of a mind stream that's counterproductive. We feel bad because of it. We behave poorly because of it. We struggle to be resilient or productive because of this. And so, this ability to challenge these mindsets, it doesn't necessarily have to be a digging deep. It could be as much as just popping the abscess. So it's recognizing that it's there. There's some validity and truth to it because you feel it. You're thinking it and you feel it. That makes it real. And learning to develop these skills that allow you to release it in a productive and effective way, clean it up, and then move on from it so that you're actually moving forward instead of just being stuck in the scab. I think that's a really, really important skill that we can all learn to develop.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. People are probably realizing that you've been in this community a long time just because of the way you're talking, the passion that you have for what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about your background and how are you here with veterinary teams living well?
Sure. Yeah. So I joined the veterinary community purely by accident in the late 90s. I started off as an on-the-job trained, like tech assistant at a PetSmart Veterinary Services in Boulder, Colorado, for those of you who might recall PetSmart Veterinary Services. And so I've been working in vet med for 27 years. And started in, tech kind of work, and eventually moved myself into like a supervisory position. And I was at several practices over the years, and eventually sort of found myself accidentally on purpose in practice ownership and management. So I became a partner in a practice, and that's how I got into practice management. Did that for several years, a couple different small animal hospitals. Went through my own kind of personal experience of burnout, of not doing a great job at practicing the skills that I now really advocate for. And from that, it really kind of hit me that I feel like the people who are called to this work are, incredibly worthy human beings. And the work that we do is sort of in and of itself deeply meaningful. And that combination of worthy human beings doing meaningful work should result in sustainable fulfillment for people. But more often than not, we find that working in this field actually results in depletion and burnout and high rates of turnover and all of the other poor outcomes. And it just kind of hit me a few years ago that there's just really got to be a better way of doing the things that we do. And so I left all of what I was doing. I sold my equity. I resigned my position as hospital administrator. I left the consulting company I was a part of, the consolidating group I was working with, and I set myself on the mission of finding a better way. And so that's what I do now through my consulting firm, Flourish Veterinary Consulting, and with the educational background I have now in positive psychology and positive leadership and positive organizational scholarship, all of these positive things. So I'm trying to kind of bring 20 plus years of experience in the field, combined with thousands of hours of advanced education in the science of what it means to be a thriving individual in the workplace and thriving teams, to help veterinary medicine find that better way. And so, of course, all of that contributes to living and working well. So, when the opportunity came to be a part of the first ever veterinary teams living and working Symposium, my goodness, of course, I couldn't pass
that. That's a mouthful, isn't it? And I've got the joys of having and working from my backyard. But yeah, you've been through a lot in your career, and some of it was just recently. And coming to this idea too of the positive education and mastery of that. So tell us a little bit more about that, because you've got some unusual credentials behind your name that a lot of us are not familiar with.
Yeah. So So the very, very quick history. So a little over 20 years ago, a research psychologist by the name of Martin Seligman was elected president of the American Psychological Association, and he used that platform to launch a new, robust, evidence-based field of research in psychology called positive psychology, which has since become kind of applied positive psychology. And this idea of looking at the psychology of the human experience from a sort of illness or a deficit approach is insufficient. That the alleviation or removal of mental suffering does not necessarily equate to mental wellness. And so what positive psychology is really all about is looking at what are the variables and factors and behaviors and mindsets and all of these things that contribute to not just people being okay, but actually human beings thriving as individuals, in relationships, in the workplace, in communities, and at the societal level. And so that's the field of applied positive psychology. So I am finishing up a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. I've got some certifications in positive psychology and building effective teams and culture management in the workplace and all of these kinds of things, because it all kind of relates.
But what you've done, from my view, is you've taken that medical background and the things that you've known in the veterinary community, and we're so science driven and science based.
Sure.
And so now, when I read your blogs, and I'm an avid reader of Josh's blogs, I'll just put everybody out there. It blends both of those, and you do it so well, so exquisitely.
Thank you. That's very kind. I think it's really important to have both a rational basis and a real life, a basis behind what we do. I do try and do that. Combine it.
So how can we drive people, and we'll be populating your blogs throughout our symposium and throughout our programs as well, but how can people find you?
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me online at my website, which is also a mouthful. It's at flourishveterinaryconsulting.com. Flourish is FLOURISH, veterinaryconsulting.com. And my blog is on there. I post an article every couple of weeks, and I try really hard to bring both the current science and research behind these concepts that drive positive leadership and thriving teams, and combine them with actionable steps that folks can actually use right away to help bring the science to life. You can find me on LinkedIn, of course, Josh Vaisman, just on there anywhere. Searching me on there. And then I'm also pretty active on Facebook. Flourish has a pretty active Facebook page as well.
Yeah. And for all of our folks that are on our Veterinary Teams Living Well general Facebook page, Josh is a regular poster and commenter and driver in that group as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you have any questions for me, Josh? Anything I can help you with, or?
I can't think of anything. What are you most excited about?
I am most excited about bringing together veterinary coaches and folks within our veterinary community to really, truly show people how they can integrate their life and their career and make it sustainable and make it not dreary. I mean, you and I both know and have heard those horrible stories, and they're true, about the many people that get off of a shift at the veterinary, their job at the veterinary hospital or wherever they're at, and sob, crying, going home.
Yeah.
And so we want people to know and understand that there's so many more ways that we can stay in this community, stay providing the pet care and the relationships that we have with our teams and within our clients, and that we're doing it. The entire symposium is focused on that. That just makes me happy.
That's awesome. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. You know how animated I am. I just can't help myself.
Good. It's good. I like it.
Wonderful. Well, we will take this and populate it all over the place. We'll be sure to link Josh's information on below somewhere, wherever this shows up.
Sure.
And Thank you, Josh. Big hug for all that you do with our community. You know I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye, hon. There we go.